Hey, here we go. We got intro music. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air live on the Dead Air YouTube channel. I gotta lower this. I don't know if you guys can hear me when I do that. I'll bring it down from there, though. Yeah. Trying different things all the time. You know, why not keep it with the rock and roll? But ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our Sunday show. We are back after the Mother's Day debacle, as we call it, from last week. Unfortunately, our very special guest was not able to make it, fell under the weather, Michelle Belanger. So hopefully she will be joining us here in the next following weeks if we can get everything arranged for us. But my name is George Lopez. With me, as always, Mr. Ken DaCosta. We are also broadcasting on KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and Facebook. Always, guys, hit that subscribe button if you've not done so before, first-time viewers. Also, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button for those things that you love and or like, and the reminder bell for upcoming content. All kinds of new things coming up right here on Dead Air. Mr. Ken DaCosta in the great state of Rhode Island. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It has been an awful busy week here in the great state of Rhode Island for me. So this I'm looking at is sort of like my decompression chamber tonight. I get to join you and our lovely guest tonight, and from also the great state of Rhode Island, some dear friends of ours who are joining us tonight. A lot of times, as we've said before, we like very much to introduce people to a new audience, and we have a couple of really interesting people tonight with some great perspectives on things, and we'll be digging into that shortly.
You know, you friggin' Northerners. I'm so over you Northerners already. You know, it's just, and right now we just got notified from the National Hurricane Center that this is the 7th year in a row that they are predicting a high volume of storms for hurricane season. Now, we've been very, very lucky over the last 2 years or 3 years. We didn't have anything remotely close to the East Coast. West Coast has been getting slammed. Peninsula has been getting slammed, but we've been very fortunate up to now. So hopefully we can continue that trend. Global warming, whatever the reason is, that's making this an avoidance area. Because I have a wood-framed house, and I don't want to have to deal with any of the insurance claims. So,
well, it ain't a storm until Jim Cantor shows up
sideways
in a Columbia, heavy jacket, standing in the rain, coming down sideways. Yeah. See Jim Cantor or Jim Cantone, whoever he is. Go the other way, wherever he is, and if he starts running. Don't ask questions, you run to.
No, the secret is check the background. If there's two guys walking along the beach while he's doing that with,
walking a dog.
No big, and waving at the camera, then, it's theater. It's definitely theater.
Sideways here. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you had a busy week. You were talking UFO. You were involved in a convention and a lecture this weekend. And, you're like an encyclopedia, Ken, and I should suck up to you.
We had a couple of pages missing after this week, pal.
Yeah, let me learn. For those of you that have been following the dad scenario, my father, as I told you guys, I think 2 weeks ago, that he fell, he broke his hip. He's 87. Complications ensued, but right now we had him moved to a physical rehabilitation center where they are. It's like boot camp. 3 hours a day, they don't let up, and he's doing everything possible to get better so that he can get home. So thank you guys again for all your well wishes. That's greatly appreciated.
It's like full metal hip replacement there.
And then some. Well, he was in the Army. He was in the Korean War. He knows what it's all about. So and never complains. The man never complains the whole time that he's there. And he says, "No, I got no pain. I don't feel any pain." I'm like, "Wait, wait till the muscles start getting sore." So that's
Okay.
the good
All right.
part.
I'll have what he's having.
Yeah. Coming into the time of the year now where the spring thaw has already begun, and there are going to be a lot more active paranormal investigators out there. A lot of them kind of hunker down because of the weather. And, as a matter of fact, Ken and I have had conversations in the not too distant past about some cases and that they had to delay and postpone because the weather was so horrible out there. And you guys are all well past that now, correct?
Yeah, I think that whatever normal is, we're kind of getting back to that now. It's just going out this week. We were talking at this fundraiser that we were doing where our guests were Elise and Carl. That it's nice to sort of get back out around people a little bit and be a little social. Catch up on some old acquaintances. So, in that regard, it's good. As far as people getting out again, just canvassing the room, talking to people, like how you doing. It's slowly building a little momentum that people are heading back out into these locations because it's been tough. It's like you're sure of what you're doing, but who you're coming in contact with, there's that sort of latent mistrust that you have,
Sure.
and it's just because you're conditioned to kind of look at everybody. It's almost like a German Shepherd. You introduce somebody and they say, "Has he had his shots?" It's like, "Yeah, I think so. I think we're covered here."
Yeah. Yeah, and you just visited a one of our favorite places this weekend, correct? Or this past week?
Yeah, Wednesday, myself, a couple of our people, we were invited to go back to the farmhouse in Harrisville, Conjuring House, and
Oh, good for you. Must be nice.
yeah, I know. You wrote a book, didn't you?
I wrote a book with Andrea
Yeah,
Perrin. I still haven't been to the Conjuring House.
right. Well, anyway, to add salt to that wound, I guess this is part
Please.
of a proposed Netflix series that
Mm.
an Australian film crew is doing, where they're going to travel to different locations and see what's going on there, talk to some of the people that are close and attached to them. So it was a lot of fun. And as anybody who's ever done this knows, there's a lot of hurry up and wait involved in this. I think I was there for about 10 hours and spent maybe an hour and a half of that in the house.
So now, on top of everything else that Ken DaCosta's got in his ensemble list of accomplishments, he's now going to be on Netflix. Bill, you better be ready. He's probably going to ask for a company car. Producer
I
Bill
already
will
have
be
a
ready.
company car. I told
Oh,
you this.
Jesus. Oh, God.
Well, you didn't get one?
I hate being in Florida.
Cat's out of the bag now.
I'm isolated from everything. Anyway, no further delay. Look, I'm looking forward to this discussion tonight. It's going to be something that, again, so many of the people that come and join us each and every week here on Dead Air, it's a familiar territory. Number one, we're going to dig a little bit deeper with our guests tonight and get into some religious areas. So we'll see how that goes. But Ken, why don't you go ahead and bring our guests on board?
Absolutely. Okay. Carl Johnson is an author, public figure. He's appeared on the Ghost Hunters TV series, I think, for the first 2 or 3 years. He was a regular cast member. Also, A Haunting, Paranormal Witness, among other shows. Very well known in the field of paranormal investigation and research, specializing as a demonologist and a chthonocist, and he's going to get into a little bit of that as far as what that field is all about. And 49 years of experience, so he's an OG. And Elise Giammarco Carlson, a parapsychological investigator with the Office of Paranormal Investigations, available in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut area. She's also a noted historian with extensive knowledge of New England burial grounds. Together, they form Panorama Paranormal, and we'd like to bring them in right now. So, Elise and Carl, please come in and join us.
Hello there.
Hi, Ken.
How are you
George.
tonight?
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's a long time no see. What, it's been about 12 hours now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I slept last night, so I don't always. So
Yeah,
it's been about 12 hours. Yeah, went to a rave there. Yeah.
You guys, I had reached out to you yesterday. You guys were kind enough to come on tonight, and I really appreciate it because this will be interesting. It's like, sort of a reunion of sorts, but we love to have people on with different perspectives, and I know you got those.
Mm-hmm.
That we do.
Somewhat different, we're told. Yeah.
Different from each other, different from other people.
Yeah.
Always interesting.
I heard some angelic music playing in the back.
That's his phone.
My phone, yeah.
It's a fan club.
Everybody's probably letting you know that, hey, we can see you on the computer. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow, we're seeing you. Yeah.
Well, I imagine when you're doing the shows, the same thing. When those certain shows would air, Ghost Hunters, or when you were going around and traveling to all these different these different episodes of these different television shows, do you get those calls? Hey, I see you on TV, and you're like, I'm home. I'm home right now. You know that I'm not actually there live. You get that a lot.
Oh, I get OMG, you're on TV. I'm watching you now. You're on.
Yeah.
Where are you? Yeah, I will get that. Yeah. Well, we do all those shows live, of course. So that's where I am. Yeah. I always appreciate it. I get a lot of screen caps too on Facebook and other social media. They send me pictures. And it's not just my phone. They'll send me pictures of me. Yeah, I remember that. I was there. Yeah, it was fun. I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys, it's kind of like a Gilligan's Island thing. I mean, you guys are in syndication and rerun. Look at it this way, Carl. You'll never get older than you were like 16 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, as time capsules around, some of them I'm pretty happy with, like the old Ghost Hunters days, because that was like going nigh on to 20 years ago now, almost. It'll be in a couple of years, like 18 years ago. So yeah, been some time distance there. I particularly like an episode of A Haunting where they portray. I've had two actors play me, and boy, they played me good. And I was one shows me as a teenager, one episode, and I get calls from that, and I said, "See, I told you I was a good-looking teenager. Look at me there. I was handsome." Yeah, that's probably my favorite episode.
Yeah, TikTok sensation Carl Johnson.
That's what's next. Yeah, we're gonna figure out the website thing, then a TikTok for you.
Yeah, I won't say anything if you won't.
We might surface there. Carl.
Well, what I want to do is go ahead and turn the reins over to Ken, because I know, and sometimes I get so involved with having conversations with everybody, and he's got a list of questions. I want him at least to get through the bulk of those certain topics, and then I'll jump back in with you guys here in a little bit, okay?
Sure, we'll be here for you.
All right, go ahead. Ken?
Right, sure. I had a list of questions here.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody cares.
We care.
So right now, you guys have formed Panorama Paranormal, which is an interesting name. Why choose that one?
Panorama means everything.
Yeah, that's
which after a while we narrowed our scope a little bit, but we're open to everything. We'll consider anything anybody wants to talk to us about, and if we don't know anything about it, we'll refer them to somebody who does.
Okay, it's a good way to go about those kind of things. But you, Elise, when we first met, which was a number of years ago, I know you were heavily involved in the Historical Society in Rhode Island, Johnston, and I believe you still are. Not so much into the paranormal. You had an interest in it, but I don't think you were actively involved as a participant. So what made you take the plunge with the rest of us?
Well, I started off with public investigations, especially we were at the Warwick Historical Society that time, and actually had something happen while we were there. And that just really, piqued my interest. Let's see if we can make it happen again somewhere. Not make it happen, but have it happen again somewhere. And I, had gone to a few other public things. I had been to Slater Mill, and nothing ever happened again. But then you start talking to people to whom things have happened, and it's just so interesting. And, things I read about when I was a child and watched in search of, and read those Reader's Digest books, and the world's last mysteries. And it was also interesting, and to actually see something happen and to have people tell me experiences about things that happened. How could I not? And then my kids were bigger, and I was able to spend a little time doing these things and studying these things. And one thing led to another, like they always do.
Yeah, and I'm glad we motivated you to that point.
Ken was a starting point for you, yes.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to cover is that you decided to also take a leap into the parapsychological aspect of this. So I wanted to ask you, what was the draw of that, and what do you think are the advantages of it, and in terms of the human mind and how it relates to the paranormal?
Well, like most people in Rhode Island, I was brought up Catholic, and there are angels, demons, and I'm going to hell if I'm bad, and I'm going to heaven if I'm good, and that kind of wore thin after a while. And I was looking for a purpose, and you look into everything, and I found that what makes the most changes in our lives is our own minds. So I started, I didn't want to say new age woo woo, I can make myself better, and if you think it, you can be it. But I really did start reading a lot more about things that area. So being a child of the 70s, I knew about ESP, I knew about PK and astral projection and astral travel. And, these things were always like far out there to me, that I, just read about these things happen to other people. Never had any of them happen to me. But as I started reading more and more, and not just books by people who, any Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along, but people who are astrophysicists, people who are physicists, people who were psychologists and neurologists, and they're writing about these things, about how the human mind works, either accidentally or on purpose, where things, you talk about poltergeist, and that comes from the human mind. That's an accidental thing. But you've got other people like Martin Caidin that could make things move with his mind, even though he's a science fiction writer. He was, into parapsychology and PK, and actually started doing experiments that could actually make these things happen. People studied him and wrote papers about it. I just found that all so interesting. So I met a friend, Michelle, who also found it interesting, and we decided to take a class at the Rhine Center, North Carolina. We take them online. But,
anybody who's been living perhaps under a rock, tell them just a little bit about what the Rhine Center represents.
The Rhine Center is a parapsychology study center that was started actually at Duke University as a parapsychology department in the 1930s. They were expanding on, if you want to go back, 90 years before that, the center, in England, there were a group of scientists who were trying to discount psychics because they felt that psychics and spiritualists were trying to prey upon people, charge them money to speak to their dead relatives. Right. So fast forward to the Rhine Center, they decided to, make it even more scientific and study parapsychology. And they narrowed down, that was in the 1930s, but that was at Duke University. By the 1960s, J.B. Rhine, who was the main scientist who started the parapsychology department, and his wife, Louisa, by the 1960s, retiring from Duke University, started the Rhine Center, their own place. They weren't working under the aegis of the college anymore. So, I lost my train of thought. So the Rhine Center.
You got it all. You're flowing right through it. Yeah. How the Rhine Center started.
So you grabbed some classes from the Rhine Center.
We decided to take classes from that Rhine Center, Michelle and I. The first one we took was developing your psychic abilities, because we thought we could be psychic. And apparently it takes a lot longer than 8 weeks. But, but we did find it interesting, and we really liked how the classes progress. You're given a lesson every week and a homework assignment every week, which consists of writing an essay, and you have to post that within the classroom where everybody can read it, which I hadn't written an essay since I graduated from Bryant in 1986. And you have to comment on another person's essay. So it starts a discussion in the topic of what's going on. And as I chose different classes, these discussions are fantastic. I've learned that, a lot of the people that are in these classes are just like me. like to be investigators, and I can go into that too. But want to learn more on the topic of parapsychology. But some of these people I found were demonologists. I found were psychics. I found were psychologists, psychiatrists. It's a really great community of people who, even though the students, we are not involved in laboratory work and trying to figure out, can I affect this random number generator? We get to discuss with each other what we think on these topics. And it's a lot more informative than just picking up. I mean, I read a lot of books, but just picking up random books and trying to remember what I've learned from each book. It kind of codifies it and puts everything together and makes sense out of it for me.
Yeah. And Carl, through I think
that's right. I just wanted to say that it's not any like pretend class either. I mean, just because you don't get in like a AMA, MDA, or masters out of it, accredited only carries so much weight. It is a real comprehensive course that she's taken, a series of courses, and she gets homework, as she said, and they have grades, and that's a little nerve-wracking, when you are going to be graded on your work. So
you don't have to bring those home to have them signed, do you? Still at
No,
this
goodness.
Wonderful.
I still like to tell Dad when I get an A, though.
Yeah, right. And Carl, folks like you and I who have been doing this a long time, it's almost like we get sort of a crash course in psychology through osmosis, I think, because
because we're dealing with that human element.
Yeah, you're dealing with the human psyche, and I think when you start out, it's a little daunting at first, and there are certain signs that you miss, but experience sort of brings that to you. So, especially in the realm of demonology, because, of course, you are very much more approachable than someone like me when it comes to that. So, tell us a little bit about your perspective on how people think and how that pertains to what is really kind of like different area of the paranormal.
Well, that's when it becomes disturbing to people, and I get contacted, or a group will say, Carl, could you help us out with this? I think we're in over our heads with this. This guy's got some really disturbing aspects of his haunting, and we want you to address it. And so people are looking for some genuine solutions. The paranormal can be quite disturbing. By the way, you'd say the paranormal because it's an umbrella term. You wouldn't say the parapsychology. No, so there is a division there. But yeah, it gets into even the name, the aura around it, the demonology. It seems kind of dark and sinister, and it's something people can be afraid of. So I have to take it seriously. And I've never run into a demonic situation or later adjudicated a demonic situation where there wasn't some kind of past trauma or something went wrong. There's some seriously unresolved conflict in the person petitioning for help. It's not just that innocent people moved into a house unaware and suddenly there was a demon there and their lives were turned upside down. If it's demonic, or what we decide is demonic, something happened. So psychology does play very much into it, more than normal ghost hunting would have that element, because something happened to bring this dark force in. The person may have suffered some kind of imbalance in their past, and it hasn't been addressed, and that's how it's surfacing. You'd be surprised how what's the murky recesses of the human psyche, how something can push its way forward and manifest in activity, paranormal activity. And the house they're living in can make a psychic scream. I've had incidents. In fact, I remember one in Brooklyn, Connecticut, Brooklyn, New York, where, they definitely had PK activity. We were on the way over there, and one of the people in the house, she would wear a rosary around her neck. That was pulled off her when we were on the way over there. Chairs would move around. You'd hear people talking in the next room, and you'd go in there, and then nobody in there. They definitely had a haunting. The 14-year-old daughter was being very disturbed at night. She had a nasty lady coming into her room. The lady was friendly at first and then showed her teeth, and she had fangs. So they had, their house was going topsy-turvy. They really had stuff going on. But during the interview process, I began to find out more about their past, the homeowners and her cousin and the daughter. And the more and especially the lady's father, the more we probed, the more we found out that they really didn't have a normal household before. And the homeowner's upbringing was, kind of shattered at times. And her mother died very mysteriously. And hearing all these, what amounted to horror stories, I had to tell her, I said, the problem with your house isn't the supernatural. Are you saying I'm making this up? I said, no, I've seen it. I know you have stuff going on here. But the problem isn't the haunting. The haunting is the symptom of the problem. That you have to look back into your past and you have to resolve all these things you've told me about your parents and grandparents and what has happened in this house. It's a disease, and it's a mental disease in the house, and it has to be arrested. It has to be stopped. You have to go back into your past and find out just when it started with you, how it affected your mother. So it gets complicated. You feel like a psychologist in a way, but people will rely on you as such. But you don't always have the cut and dry answers that they seek. It's much easier to blame a demonic entity than look into one's past and say, oh, what's the matter with me? What's happened to me? Why can't I let this feeling out? Why can't I express it? To think that it's the onus is on them. That's more responsibility. It's so much simpler to say, oh, the spirit's here. If you get rid of the spirit, we'll be normal again. Our house will be fine and light. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I mean, accountability is always an issue. But it's a slippery slope to walk when you have to ensure that people, let's put it another way. The psychological aspect of it is kind of like a guardrail that goes up, because you have to cross that threshold first before you run the risk of empowering somebody with a psychosis. It's a very, very, it can be a very tenuous thing, and it has to be handled by the right kind of person, and not someone who just boasts that, oh boy, I have a demonic haunting. It's like you had to have actually been there and dealt with the human element to be able to address these things in a, if you want to call it professional way, that's fine, but in a systematic way is probably a better way of putting it.
And it's difficult to argue that it is not something wholly supernatural. How easy would what I do be if I could go into someone's home and say, oh, you feel that darkness, that heaviness, and you're seeing shadow people here. Okay, you've got a demon. We have to address this with holy prayers, and we have to confront the demon. I mean, there is that aspect of it. But to say, it's something that's come upon you, it's a minion of hell, it's a master demon, and we have to find its name out and cleanse the house, and then you'll be fine.
Right.
Take that approach, and then a week later, it's come back. It's come back. Well, of course it has, because they've gotten used to it, and they've relied on their demonic presence, and gives their anxiety substance. They can pin it on that. It's because of the thing in our house. And I'm not saying people are delusional or inventing that. It is a real force. Yeah, they believe it, and it becomes real. And then they have the paranormal activity to support that. So how can you argue when things, tables are moving around in our house? My daughter had slap marks on her face, and it's tough to say, look inside. Where did it start? When did you first get this? Do you remember, your divorce? You remember the trauma when your little girl was only 2 years old? You remember these things that happened, and correlate that to the paranormal activity. What do you see a parallel there? And what happened with your mother? When she fell down those stairs and nobody could see how that happened. Like that was a division. And what was your grandfather into? He was running. It was like the hoods of Brooklyn were meeting there. The criminal element were meeting there. You can tell why I'm not using names here. And that there were strange things going on. And there was bootlegging in the house in the 1940s. A lot of things happened in that house. No wonder there's the dark presence. It's not that there's so much a demon, a separate demon. It's the house is the demon. The house is haunting. The house is the problem. The house has gained a personality, and everybody goes along with it because everybody's a component of that household.
Yeah. And Elise, you came to this. I didn't mean to interrupt, so don't forget what you're going to say. But a lot of people who are 30 years old who come into this field claim that they've been involved in the paranormal for 20 years. So, but when you came into this with other interests, and you came into this as an evolved adult, and you got to look at all this stuff from 10,000 feet before you jumped into it and did your research and asked your questions. So looking back on that, do you have any regrets, or that you didn't do it sooner? Or is it like, I kind of like the way I went about it because I already had a knowledge base before I decided, yeah, let's go out and experience some of these things rather than read about them.
Well, I did decide that field investigating was the way to go because, like I said, I don't have any scientific experience where I could set up some sort of a laboratory. And besides, even when people do, it's kind of hard to get the ghosts to show up. So they tend to. Parapsychology has 3 different components. It's ESP, mind-to-mind communication, PK, mind over matter kind of stuff, and the possibility of survival after death. So the first 2 are kind of hard and, out in the field. That they tend to lend themselves to laboratory experiments. So field investigations is where it's at, and the possibility of survival, which covers, everything from grandma's ghost showing up to, reincarnation of children in India. It seems to always happen in India for some reason. And, but so field investigating, it's only really 2 reasons that you should investigate out in the field. And one is to substantiate or disprove a claim that a person calls you and says, I saw something, heard something, felt something, or to ideally both, to further the field, to add something credible, something realistic, something logical to the field of parapsychology. So when someone does call, the first thing we do, of course, is even before we go over there, we talk to them on the phone. We send them a long survey. We read the survey. We send them some more questions. We talk to them on the phone some more. And COVID, notwithstanding, then we go, look at the location. Coming into it as an adult, I have so much more knowledge. Of course, we look for a normal explanation first. I have so much more knowledge as an adult that has had children. I can tell when people are lying. I was a property manager for a condo development. I've owned a home for years. Just practical knowledge that I can go through that first, walk through and talking to people and looking at the location and know the right questions to ask that we can, escalate ourselves to, is this real, a little more quickly than if I didn't have this practical, realistic world knowledge that I just gained as an adult, not even as a paranormal investigator.
Well, it's called street smarts.
Exactly.
It's world experience. It's
Exactly.
life experience,
Yes.
that you don't have those things because there's nothing wrong with getting into this at a young, but I think you do have to realize that you have to evolve and you have to take that ego and you have to check it because, you need life you need social experiences. Yes. You need to learn how to read people.
Yes, that's why we work together well with just 2 of us because people aren't intimidated. We're not walking in with a whole team of people and, all kinds of equipment and, we're going to come and find your ghost. No, we just want to chat. You know what? Before we get started, let's just sit and have a nice talk. And we have learned more about people through those talks than we ever could using any kind of a gadget.
Yeah, be the calmest person in the room.
Yes.
Take away the fear and just be a neighbor who's coming over. It's just kind of like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Looking at this from a different perspective, there are a lot of reasons that people say, why do spirits remain in this mortal coil? And I guess when it comes down to 2 of them, number one, they're either trapped for some reason, and you hear all these theories because we do love our theories in this field. They don't know they're dead or they're surprised it was traumatic death. They still think they're alive. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll take somebody's word for that. But in my experience, it seems like there is more free will involved than we perhaps think. And I guess I'm talking about visitation. People come and go as they please. I've never run into a situation where we have, through whatever means, contacted and had an ongoing conversation beyond the yes, no, get out, all the typical EVP things. But it seems to me more and more I'm starting to learn that there's free will involved. Carl, do you think that's the case? Do you think this being trapped in this environment, not that it doesn't exist, but you think that's a little overblown sometimes?
I think a lot of the times the spirits, if you will, don't have much of a choice in what they do. They're limited in their propensities, but they can kind of come and go and move around as they please. Because when I've encountered spirits, that seem to be once living people, they seem to be able to do what they want. I mean, they've looked right at me. They're not just residuals or atmospheric haunts that are floating about. In fact, I've encountered so-called residual haunts where they just play back what they were doing. And after about the third time you see them, they look, they turn and look, which is why they even need to turn and look. I don't know. There's some real human characteristic about these ghosts, isn't there? Because supposedly they don't have anything to them, yet they move and they turn their heads and they look with eyes. They're habituated to that.
But do they really have eyes?
No,
and are they really looking at you?
I don't think they can. Well, they give a good impression of it. They look right at me. And
do they have
blink.
mouths that they talk to you with? Do they have vocal cords?
I've never seen a spirit talk to me and open its mouth, except in a very vivid, lucid dream. I have seen that, yes. But no, my favorite spirit was when I was in my parents' house, and that lady who used to walk around, and she was very scary at first. Because what was so eerie about this woman, it would take a couple of seconds to collate and realize this is something from the past. This is not a living person. I'd see somebody walking, maybe 3 seconds. It's a long time to see a ghost. And she'd be walking around. She was in old-fashioned clothing. So this is interesting. But what was scary about it was her footfalls made no sound. She was just gliding along. She was taking steps, but they weren't resonating or making any sound. And so she was scary. But I got to know her better and like her. But I think she spoke to me on a recording, which was my first ever EVP. And I didn't even know what an EVP was because I hadn't seen that on In Search of yet. And that goes back to 1973. And I was just recording with a friend of mine. We played back our audio recording and we were recording some music and our conversation. And what comes out was this voice, and sounded like a voice in slow motion. Like, someone help me. What do we got? Played it back a few times. That sounds like it's a voice. It's saying, someone help me. My friend had a recorder that would speed it up. So he accelerated the recording, and it says quite clearly, Carl, help me, help. So maybe that was the lady speaking to me. I don't know. I never knew what to do about it, but it was fascinating as heck.
I wanted to ask you, in the introduction, we talked about a phrase that maybe a lot of people are not familiar with. Demonology, of course, is recognizable, but chthonicism, which is related, but yet not totally related, as I understand it, just doing a little background research on it, as far as the demonic. So those who are not familiar with that, Carl, just let us in on it a little bit. What is being a chthonocist entail? And
actually, background? It comes from a Greek word, and it's a chthonocist is someone who studies and has a familiarity with the classical underworld spirits, like Nibiros, Pluto, some of those awesome sounding names from mythology, Hecate. Some are incorporated into witchcraft, and Persephone. It would be somebody that has studied these things, the classic myths, and is familiar with origins of demons, because many of these demonic entities, that, as far as their names, were once gods, and it's all a matter of acceptance to somebody. If you accept them as real, then it's theology. If they're myths, then it's mythology. If you don't believe the stories are real, but all these myths were at one time believed in. They were their religions. So it's somebody who studies those underworld deities as they were. And I think that anybody who's a demonologist or specializes as a demonologist should have that knowledge. Where did these things come from in the first place? And I actually prefer the term chthonocist to demonologist, because you read a lot into demonologist, but then again, if you're a chthonocist, you don't get invited to the same parties as you would if you're
Yeah.
a demonologist. People say, "Yeah, bring the demonologist. I just don't want to in the restaurant. I don't want to sit near that guy." But let's say bring the demonologist in. Yeah, that's the one when speaking of like reporters, news people, the demonologist. I want to talk to the demonologist. Have you brought demons up from hell? I've heard that one before. But it denotes more of a study. I define demonology as the systemized study of the lore and cultural traditions of wicked spirits. Not a lot of people understand that anyway. It's a study. You don't have to be an applied demonologist to be a demonologist. But I just kind of like chthonocist.
I think that we've been conditioned. We've probably been conditioned through popular culture to think of a demonologist as someone with a Bible, a cross, holy water, goes in, whose job it is, take these away, banish them. So I think that, and I mean no offense by this, it's almost like the study of it, someone who's a demonologist almost becomes, in a way, a caricature or a victim of people's preconceived idea based on what they see. And I would love you to respond to that. I'm going to bring George in right now because I'm going to be taking a little break. Isn't this great? The hosts get to take a break. The guests, no, you guys stay there.
Yeah, I made a sandwich and got more coffee, but we're doing good.
Sounds good.
No, I've never left your side, Ken. Never done that. And look what he did. He just did the same thing.
Now he disappeared.
He's
Sandwich sounded good.
This is quantum entanglement. They can't. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Peeking in and out. Our very special guests, Elise and Carl, are joining us this evening. Panorama Paranormal, and the direction I want to go with this, and I want an analytical view from Elise as I want to address this with Carl, but we have been socially programmed, Carl, in a sense, and I'm not just talking about the paranormal field, but in general, human beings, anyone who's been touched by religion, Christianity, Catholicism, anything with regards to theology brings in the aspect of good and evil. And that is just part of our history. It is there. It's ingrained. There's nothing to dismiss that. Yes, there are people out there that are atheists, people who don't want to even go down that road. The same ones, though, funny enough, if they're in a tight position, please God help me is the first thing comes out of their mouth. But when we address something like this in this field, is there a part of us that needs to detach, Carl, from the theology as a learned investigator, somebody who's out there on a regular basis? You've done it on television, off television. You've done it with teams and individually. Do you still pursue truth? And what I mean by that is we look at everything as being good and evil, that something that people are dealing with is demonic. Is there still a possibility that we are getting this wrong, that there's still something else that we could label this as, or is it just more of a comfort zone to put it as it's a demon?
Well, demon certainly has its place, or I wouldn't be in business with that. Not that I earn a living from it, but it's objectification. Everything has to be clinically analyzed, and that's a tough discipline, yes. I will say, especially when you are known as a demonologist, because you're supposed to be there to be compassionate and help people. But to look it in the eye and take a logical approach is not that easy when you're dealing with metaphysics, basically. I do take that objectivity, though. I take an analytic and even atheistic approach. I wouldn't say that I'm an atheist, really? Because there are no atheists in foxholes,
right?
But when I'm investigating, when I'm evaluating, I have to look at it that way. I have to be the scientist. I have to be the physician at that time. I'm not a religious demonologist. That doesn't mean I don't have a faith. It'd be too complex, too personal an experience to explain what my faith entails, what it is. But everybody wants to know, what are you? You got to be something. I mean, I don't know. Well, I mean, are you an atheist? I wouldn't say that. Oh, you're agnostic. I don't know. I don't think so. Oh, yeah, I am an atheist. I'm agnostic. I just said I don't know. No, then you're a Christian. Yeah, but with, an explanation. I'm guilty with an explanation. And so it's really hard. I don't like to say, I am this or that,
Yeah, well, you certainly, you're wearing multiple hats, and you have to, in a
Yes.
sense. And again, you even have to adapt to each and every individual case, because you don't know, with regards to that family, if you're going to domestic or residential cases, whether or not those people are religious to begin with,
Right.
what their particular faith is. So you've got to be able to be flexible with what it is that you're doing and how you're investigating. But I would like to ask, Elise, in that context, with regards to a case, a residential case, being out there with a group, a team, or as just a pair or an individual, when you're having these people making those specific claims, do you almost have to jump into the automatic social media mode of going along with their thought process, or do you still have to take it evidence by evidence with regards to this, and maybe be even in conflict with a said demonologist, not necessarily Carl, but whoever happens to be with that group that is doing the research? But hey, guys, it doesn't fit that parameter in my book, in my judgment.
Well, I think that you can look at the facts objectively, but still let them feel that they are validated in whatever their faith is.
Okay.
It takes a little bit of being familiar with people's religions. The newest class I'm taking, I haven't started yet, so I can't tell you a lot about it, is paraanthropology, learning about the beliefs of people around the world. I think we're very, selfish in thinking that everything that there is to read on parapsychology or paranormal in general is in English, first of all, and situated in Western Christianity, because that's what we all happen to know around here. There's a couple of Jewish people in Johnston. I haven't met them yet. But generally, 99% Italian and Irish Catholics around here. So, at least I have a good knowledge of these things going in there. But if someone was to say that, I'm from some island where we believe that, this child has been reincarnated and whatnot, I believe that the questions we ask right off the bat and start talking and, what did you see, feel, hear, smell, whatever, I think we start with the same questions in every case, depending on what their answers are. Let them know that they're validated in their beliefs, in, whatever their religion might be, their culture might support, but still be looking for the truth underneath that I don't have to have their beliefs, but I have to, let them feel comfortable enough to tell me the truth and what they're feeling.
Well, are we looking for the truth, or are we looking for the facts?
Well, you're right, though. Sometimes
there's a contradiction.
Sometimes there's a contradiction. Sometimes it's the truth. All of paranormal investigation is based on anecdotal evidence. We haven't found anything in a laboratory yet. We haven't talked to any ghosts. It's all anecdotal evidence. It's all based on people's perceptions and the investigator's perceptions. You've played telephone. So between the investigator and the person who had the experience, things can get changed. Are we looking for the truth? I would love to find the truth, wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
But all we can depend on is the perception, the explanation of the perception we get in that experience.
Ken used two words early on tonight on the show that I want to circle back to, and those are the words of free will. And I want you both to speak on this because I'll give you the scenario. Carl might be a little familiar with my scenario, my case, my situation, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest part of it. I went through a situation probably 8-10 years ago where I started getting the nightmares, but they were not nightmares as John Zaffers put it. They were night terrors. I was being attacked psychologically in my sleep to such a degree that there was a good week where I didn't even go to bed until the sun was up. 6 o'clock in the morning, sun came up. Then I finally closed my eyes. That has continued ever since. Not as frequent as it started, but I almost want to judge it as whatever is trying to get at me is looking for that weak spot in my armor, in my own soul and who I am. That being said, as you heard me say recently, my dad fell. This is the second time that he's fallen. I've pretty much for the last couple of years, I'm sure a lot of people have dealt with bouts of depression, with the pandemic and everything else that we've been dealing with. There's been a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. And yes, added to this, being a paranormal investigator, having the experiences I had. So the question to both of you, and Carl, you take this first and at least follow up, is regards to free will. Why do certain things happen when there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people probably dealing with this worldwide, one way, shape, or form, but certain ones wind up having these extraordinary supernatural events that they go on in their home or with themselves. A mixture of things may be involved, as Carl said. A house that used to be a for rum runners, for bootleggers, things of that sort. But why are some having these things happen to them and most are not? Does it have to do with that individual's free will?
Well, because we are a species that abstracts and analyzes and needs an answer to everything. We don't like saying we're ignorant about something, don't know. If we're in trouble, if there's a spiritual force bearing against us, we don't want to say we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know what to do about it. So we supply the answers. The answers are synthesized sometimes, and they may be true at that time and in that special environment to that individual.
A superficial answer is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't want to say it sounds superficial in a non-caring way, like
no,
the person's just like floating through it. But it becomes their reality, their isolated reality. It's synthesized, it's manufactured. The Ed Warren, if I could bring that in, Ed Warren demon. Ed Warren was a very famous, probably the most famous the most famous demonologist we've had. Ed Warren would go in and assess a case, and he would often pronounce it demonic because all the signs were there. Goes in, feel your skin's tingling, feel an evil presence. And the people have reported seeing a shadowy black figure moving around. It's terrifying their children. And so Mr. Warren goes in with his lovely wife, Lorraine, and there's a heaviness in the house and there's a foul odor. No one can explain it. It smells like decay. Where's it coming from? Religious iconography tips over of the table, or religious pictures fall off the wall, and people are waking up with slashes on them, or abrasions. Now, how can anybody claim that's not demonic? You've got A, B, C, and D going on. Of course it's demonic. Don't you believe in an afterlife? Don't you believe in anything spiritual? Now that's made the demon. And once somebody embraces the belief in a demon, once they are convinced they have a demon after,
exactly,
very hard to shake. It's like you have a nervous twitch, or you have a habit, smoking, whatever. It's very hard to quit it cold turkey, to look at it in the face, say, I don't really believe this, because it comes back. It comes back, and the demon is made, and you have all this evidence to support it. The coffee cup goes across the table, which I actually like when those things happen to me. They don't happen enough. But, or the child wakes up screaming, and I've experienced this a number of times when I've stayed overnight at a person's house at their request, and they wake up screaming. The child has scratches on them. Nobody can understand. It's not the cat doing that. Something's happening, even to the point of levitation. Sometimes, you've got all this. You can't deny that it's something supernatural. I deny it's something supernatural.
Yeah.
In the true sense, because I equate supernatural with impossible. Interpretably, yeah, it's supernatural. It's something bizarre. It's something we can't grasp. But the person needs to interpret it. They need to understand it. That gives them an answer. It's temporary ignorance.
Right.
And it serves its purpose.
How about for you, Elise? Again, doing residential cases, and the old saying from the Northeast, "Don't BS a BSer." Yeah. I'm going to read you. But it's one of the things that we have always talked about sometime in our lives about. Superstition is one of those things.
Yeah.
But if same circumstance. Somebody comes up and says, okay, I'm putting this feather on you, and you keep this feather, and chances are in 4 or 5 days you're going to wind up tripping down the stairs. And then you trip down the stairs and you're blaming it on that rather than your clumsiness. People
because
find...
the Stego put a curse on you.
Exactly.
Well, it works both ways. Whether that, you put up that feather and say that's going to make you fall down the stairs, or you give that feather, he gives that feather to me and says, this will keep and protect you from all harm.
Another one with the feather. What is it with the feather you got?
You got a feather?
But either way,
the birds are dying in the Northeast.
I don't know what bird that came from.
Mine is bigger than yours. Let's not have any feather envy here.
I give up. No matter what you believe, I'm not going to sound like, one of those people at the power of intention, but what you put your attention on comes to pass. It really does work that way. If you go around saying that the glass is half empty, the glass is half empty. If you go around thinking that, oh my God, as long as I carry this feather, I'm safe. Now you're empowered. You're safe. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. And that's where you actually come into kind of a gray area in paranormal investigations with that, because, what I like to say is, you start with the normal and you work your way down to the supernatural, which one of my favorite quotes is, there's no such thing as the supernatural. There's only things we don't yet understand. That was a science fiction writer, Kathleen Sky, that said that. But it doesn't hurt to empower people. I'm not going to lie to them and, make up a story where they feel empowered, or make up a story where they believe they're, haunted by a demon either. Again, you have to follow their lead, follow their beliefs, follow their culture, and let them empower themselves.
Yeah.
That's free will.
And which is interesting, as you talked about somebody grabbing something as a feather and feeling that's going to be protective of them. That's something on the other side of the break that I'd like to talk about again with Carl, who's wearing his crucifix right there. And somebody said,
that's waiting you to pick up on this.
Yeah. But I wonder again, when people wear their protective St. Christopher medallion or their St. Michael, is it the actual medallion, blessed or not, that is protecting them? Or is it their faith in that item that is protecting them?
Well, so, the latter, I'd say,
yeah. But, hold that thought, because we got to go to break right now. But when we come on the other side, we'll continue our talks tonight with Elise and Carl, Panorama Paranormal, and we'll be right back after the break. Don't go anywhere, guys. Stay with us. We got a whole nother hour.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count? Why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you've got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Welcome back to the second hour of our Dead Air Sunday night show from 8 to 10 Eastern Time. And again, thank you guys for staying with us. Our very special guests are going to be joining us, Panorama Paranormal, in just a few seconds here. And Ken, I was going to intro again with more music. We're not going to deal with that. KGRADB, make sure you guys do check it out. KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and on Facebook. Don't forget all the wonderful content right here on Dead Air's YouTube channel. Why don't you give a little bit of insight, Ken, of some of the shows that we've got here? If people are listening on the other platforms, how they can get to us and what they can expect.
Yeah, let me put it up there one more time, please. We're climbing. We're doing well for all our new subscribers. Thank you for inviting us into your home. But there is an array of programming on Dead Air Full Spectrum. Of course, there is Dead Air here, which is simulcast on KGRA Digital, Facebook, etc. We also feature Monday Night Monsters with Christopher Rondiner and Ron Murphy, where a couple of legend hunting authors take on some of the most iconic monsters in literary history, from the Wolfman to vampires, and give you a little story behind the story, origins of some of these creatures that may not be what you think. There's some reality there. And of course, on Thursday nights, we have Live from the Haunted Museum every other Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern with Cody and Satori. They're absolutely wonderful. If you haven't seen them yet, stop in for an hour and spend some time with them. And of course, there is Extremely Strange, which is the guy in the baseball hat sitting right here in this room, telling some of the weirdest stories.
No baseball hat. That
you're ever going to hear. So those usually are released early in the week or sometime on weekends. So I'd appreciate a listen there. The response has been very good to that as well.
Yeah.
So plenty of programming here, and we're just starting because we're always looking for shows and people who are engaging and entertaining and reasonably handsome, which explains why we have one.
It'll count us out. I don't know where we're going to go from there.
Well, we're going nowhere. But in the second hour here, and I know there's a thought you want to continue with Carl and Elise, but in the second hour, I promise we will get to your questions. We have queued, and I know we have a bunch. Tonight, we may waive the phone calls tonight just because we're getting into so many things, and there are so many questions we have to answer. But promise you we'll get to that in the second hour. And on the other side, we're going to talk about one of Elise's other interests that I think is going to really kind of move the needle here. So with that, George, I'm going to give it back to you, and of course, finish up what you started in the first half.
I like a mystery. Looking forward to having that happen too. All right, let's bring our wonderful guests back on with us, Elise Carlson and Carl Johnson, Panorama Paranormal. Guys, again, thank you for joining us tonight. And, we were joking about it before the show, but the area behind you is all your research work, correct?
That's my office. Yeah, those are my books. Well, not my books.
No. Ken just lives in a scary attic now. That's really unbelievable.
But for all the old objects, documents, books, you name it, in this building. It's not an old building; it's a new building. We don't have any ghosts.
It sure sounds like
it's
some
historical
nights, but
society, but we have no ghosts. It's no fun. I've tried it.
yet. Always say yet, because you never know.
I've taken
All
off the Ouija board, even though there's no reason to. I tried. Nobody answered.
I think Elise is ready to come out with it, that she is you're a taphophile.
Oh, stop.
You are a taphophile. I know you're going to get a lot of
Same to
messages
you.
about that. Same to you. She says, yeah, you're a taphophile, and I think you should be proud of it. You know.
All right. So continuing with the topic just before, I don't know why we're getting a feedback right now. Is your volume a little up for me? I think it's gone right now. Okay, now it's gone away.
That was his chair moving.
Yes.
Bill's problem. So here's the topic right now. Take a look at this one.
Ooh, that's yours. That's not mine.
That's a big one right there.
I do yoga.
This is usually in my dad's room on the wall. But it's a big symbol. I mean, this
beautiful.
It is gorgeous. It really is. I'm bringing that in. Copper or bronze, rather. Bronze, excuse me. Beautiful. Been in the family for decades and decades.
That has presence to it. Yes.
Yeah. Dad's Catholic, very religious also. And, I wanted to address that, the power that comes with these symbols, and whether it is a positive or negative symbolism, but it does certainly have its influence in society. Now, for so many of us, our introductions to the cross was in church, but our introduction to the cross with relates to paranormal was movies and television shows. And it was always a warding off symbol for vampires, whatever that people were dealing with, demons. This was the one that they would use for it. So I wonder whether or not that social programming is a big step and a big part, of people feeling empowered who are in the paranormal field. And I want at least actually to speak on this first before Carl, because I'm loading these questions for Carl to answer, but at least same situation out there as an investigator. And people go out there with their St. Christopher medal or St. Michael or a crucifix or a combination of all. They'll bring in their stones. They'll bring in their crystals. They'll bring all these different things to protect themselves. And do you feel that it has some sort of an effect on their investigation, on their interaction with spirit? And the other part of it is, going back with regards to Carl, what I was going to ask you before is, are we really being affected? Are these artifacts actually protecting us, or is it all something that we're manifesting ourselves? Elise, please, you first.
I believe that, yes, it does positively work, but that we do bring it on ourselves. That, if you believe that this piece of rock, this piece of paper was blessed by the Pope, that it must be holy, it must be, have an intention, it was given to me to be safe, that if you have that belief, if you have that intent, it's going to work. And I can give you an example in my own life. Years ago, before I got into any of this, before, I was a child of the 70s, I heard of, everything in the paranormal and the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and whatever. So, I had a fleeting interest, general interest. Wow, that's interesting. When I was in college, I started having a problem where I thought I was abducted by aliens. I would hear a very loud buzzing sound. The room would go black, and all of a sudden, I couldn't move, and I would be terrified. At the time, I was, kind of a practicing Catholic because, my parents made me go to church and whatever. That was the only way I knew. I used to pray my way out of it. I used to pray and say, just the Our Father every day. I just keep going until I finally, I don't even know what happened. I know I'd wake up the next morning and say, they saved me. God saved me. And it would happen again another night, and I'd pray and I was saved again. And I'd pray and I'd be saved again. And finally it stopped happening. And, that was just a part of my past. Years later, I'm reading, not even, into the paranormal yet, but just reading. I read everything. And I read about sleep paralysis. And I said, holy cow, that is what used to happen to me. I would be falling asleep. Someone described it exactly the same. I would get out of sleep paralysis by prayer. I don't think God came and saved me from sleep paralysis. I now believe that I meditated my way out of it.
There you go.
It was my own mind. I just kept concentrating on that, concentrating on I woke up yesterday. I'm going to get up tomorrow. Just keep thinking this. Just keep thinking this. Ignore what's happening. Ignore that noise. Ignore the blackness. I must have had some sense that there were people around to be thinking it was aliens. And I meditated my way out of it. So as long as you have a belief in something, it's not going to hurt anything to believe in something.
No.
Unless it's telling you to jump off a bridge. I mean, but, if it's doing something positive for you, I believe it's a good thing.
A physiological process, the neuroparalyzer that keeps us from thrashing around when we're dreaming, when we sleep, that had to lift. And sometimes it kicks in and it keeps on going after one wakes up. I've had that happen. It's spooky. You can't lift your arms and you feel like you're being held down.
It's funny how we manifest it into something else, though, and it's based on our own experiences.
Yeah, I had never heard of sleep paralysis and so I had no basis to compare it and say, oh, well, this is something physical that's happening to me. Let me get now I know you can meditate your way out of it, or I know certain little trigger, you can wiggle your little finger. I've read a whole lot about it since then, of course.
But your original default mechanism said alien abduction. It was aliens.
How else can you explain? The room turns black and a loud buzzing sound like something's landing on the roof. I mean, and I lived upstairs.
Were you exposed to that kind of movie, those kind of films?
Close Encounters.
Yes.
So it all hits you, yeah. Again, social programming is what I keep getting back to as regards to this. It's no different with religious programming in that sense, too. When people are having things going on at their home, and as these interactions are happening, it seems to almost custom fit for that person's greatest fears.
Yes. And now you've got it coming at them from both directions, both from, Sunday morning in church and entertainment and every movie and TV show you watch, every paranormal show. It must be a demon because Zach said so.
Lisa, I think you're losing the screen a little bit. Why don't you come over here a little bit here? Because you're starting to
chair's rolling.
There you are. Now you're okay.
Right. Thank you.
So
you've got it coming at you from, so what are you going to compare your experience to? Something that something you read about, something you saw on TV.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And same thing for you then, Carl, because here's both sides. A demonologist who is not one who would normally perform an exorcism. Ed Warren did, particularly at the Conjuring House. Well, he was one of those that was ordained by the Catholic Church. But nowadays, every other demonologist out there believes that they can perform an exorcism. But
they do it like field exorcisms, like an emergency situation.
Triage, exactly. They're not priests; they're corpsmen.
Yeah, a demonologist is not always an exorcist, but an exorcist always is a demonologist. And I've talked about that. Should
get a tattoo.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we should all have that brand. I got one. I stopped at that. Yeah.
T-shirts available. T-shirts available on PanoramaParanormal.com. Okay.
Yeah. My other partner, James Anito of Duo Demonology, we like to discuss these things. You're not just because you're a demonologist, you cannot go out there and wantonly perform exorcisms. Of course, you can call it something different, like an expulsion, a minor form of exorcism. All cultures have that, whatever they term it, driving out the wicked spirits.
Let's talk about this in regards to the enactment of an exorcism or how it's performed. Is it more incumbent upon the person who is doing the exorcism that their belief is powerful enough to help with this situation? Or is it more so the recipient of the exorcism to be more believing in it helping them? Or is it a combination of both?
Well, I think the person administering the exorcism has to have a solid faith, or they're really on unsteady ground, and they could be dissuaded or, challenged if this demon comes up with something, or the demonic force speaking through the person that's afflicted, then they may lose their nerve or just feel they're ineffective, and then they're crippled as far as performing a successful exorcism. But of course, the person receiving the exorcism has to believe in the power of that exorcism. The exorcist acts as a catalyst. Well, of course, if you take about the literal Roman Catholic interpretation, the power is vested in that exorcist, and he is helping the person who has been victimized. But in a bigger picture, the person that is undergoing that alleged possession, they have to have faith in the exorcist and the procedure, and the exorcist has to believe it, and their combined belief will make that lodestone and make it effective.
Well, that person's personality is kind of underlying underneath the possession itself. So they're kind of swimming through these dark waters, hearing these prayers that are being said, particularly in
Mhm.
Latin, and
Yes.
are connecting once again to their religious strengths in order to emerge from this murky depth that they're in at that point in time.
Us in Italy, the tradition of, being, of course, mostly Roman Catholic, the tradition of exorcism is widely known and accepted. It's embraced as part of their culture. However, Occidental belief, in our Western culture, a real impact for exorcism came with the advent of the novel in 1973, The Exorcist, and then the following year, the movie in 1974. The movie is released in theaters, The Exorcist. That defines a lot of what we believe about demonology and demonism, for the American people, our English-speaking people. Now we know what a demon looks like, what it can do, what it sounds like. And of course, William Peter Blatty, the author, predicated that on actual, exorcism cases and lore and records, and one particular case. So now we know what a demon can do when it can possess, and it can change people and make them behave bizarrely, but that was a big impact, The Exorcist, and it was still felt. That's why a lot of people dread that they're being taken over by a demon, because that's what they feel it is. And I'm not saying that that's not real at any point. It's based on some things that really happened.
The aspect of demonology has been going on for quite a long time through the Catholic Church, and probably back during paganism, as a matter of fact. But
yes,
the practice and the procedure is as old as time. Now, if we thought the same way with regards to industrialization, in regards to medicine, we'd still be using leeches and doing, amputations on a regular basis. We're not far advanced from that, but we're moving along the way.
What they say about us in 100 years, yeah.
Is there, do you get the Vatican Monthly magazine that says updates? This is what we do now in exorcisms, because we're still looking at a mortality rate that's very, very high when it comes to this. And so, whether or not it is the absolute, or they have to start to look at these other things that maybe need to be tweaked to give a better chance of survival for these people who have been possessed. Does that ever come about with regards to this, or, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mentality?
Yeah, well, when you get into religious faith and you get into this, particularly demonism and exorcism, then we're dealing with the invisible, what was called in the Salem witch trials, spectral evidence. And people, I think innocent people, were condemned to death on spectral evidence, because it's, if some people saw it, the children went into frenzy. That has to be something real. What else would it be doing? That's but possession by the devil, the directed by the devil.
That's dogma. That's dogma for you.
Yeah. So, then it becomes real. It gets into a whole different echelon in there, Then the religious authoritarian comes forth, the people who know, the people who have been vested with that power by God and ceremony, and they've been ordained, and they have the power to deliver judgment on other human beings. And they're going on the invisible, the supposed. So that's where it gets fluid. That's why it hasn't advanced. You can't look into somebody's mind and see exactly what's going on there.
There were no psychiatrists back in Salem.
Not very good ones, anyway. No. That would be a tool of the devil in itself, analyzing somebody's mind. What, you speak for their spirit? Well, in fact, we like to think we're so far away from that 4 centuries later. I belong to a church, and there are many of these organizations with a cult-like hold over their followers. I was involved in a church in the 1980s that had some correlations to Salem, then the Salem witch trials. If you were accused, you were guilty, kind of.
Right.
There was some good about the church. I wouldn't have stayed with it. I had to find out if that form of religion had a place in my life, and I became more educated in the Bible and theology. It was, really a comprehensive study of the Bible and faith. But there would be times where I was accused of things I did not do because they had that power over you. And they would say outright, once you've been inured into the church, after you'd been there a couple of years, they would tell you, well, we really have life or death power over you, but we wouldn't, ever misuse that. but there were quite a few times I was directly accused by church leadership, the church elders, something that I didn't commit or wasn't thinking or wasn't doing. And I'd hear, "You're lying through your teeth." I said, "No, I'm just not reacting. I didn't do what you accused me of." And I'd say, what is this? I mean, I've been told I did a lot of things that I didn't do and brought up on charges, so to speak. And leadership would say, well, and they'd cite certain scriptures, we are more responsible. So, the burden is on us if we're wrong. We're more responsible for it. But still, they would do that. They would exercise this hold over the followers. I wouldn't call myself a follower. I was an adherent. I was a bad adherent, though. I was disobedient at times. And I was actually labeled as a non-Christian for a time because I had questions. Because I was honest with my discipler, that I said, I have questions about my cosmology. It's very difficult for me to grasp the concept of a God that created this infinitely old and vast universe, and yet we're special in this big cosmic sea. And it's difficult for me to, and I was just being frank. I said, I have a problem with this. And suddenly in a sermon, I was labeled a non-Christian. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was a bad seed, I might influence other people to doubt.
Yeah, you were not allowed to think for yourself, kind of a scenario, and that's a shame of the matter too, because I mean that's the start of existentialism, is to question things, and I think it's important that we do so, and maybe by doing that create progress, and again we could use a lot of that lately because people have kind of fallen back on a certain base opinion on things and not opening up to it. What's interesting to see, and I want to have Ken join us back in because we got some questions to cover, quite a few actually from chat, is with regards to what we see and what we hear out there on social media now that everybody's got a video camera or a regular camera with them with their phones, is some and opinions, and take away all the videographers and cinematographers that are out there that are doing masterful work that make us and paranormal investigators look like we're doing boring work compared to what they're putting out there. Same thing with ufology, same thing with cryptozoology. But as far as demonic possession, things of that sort, and you've seen a couple things out there to make you kind of chuckle, but somewhere along the way, somebody who may not be affiliated in any way with religion and having to deal or contend with this and trying to figure out which is the direction to go. It'd be interesting to see what may be discovered in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm waiting to see that too. Mr. DaCosta, you've gotten a barrage of questions, I see.
I do. And excuse me, before I get into my last conversation, my last topic with Elise and Carl, we're going to take some questions. We have some. This is a burning question that maybe we'll get to, Carl, and then you kind of like sort of got into the issue, but the cross necklace, is it for protection? If you're not a Christian, why do you wear a cross? Just out of curiosity, I guess.
No, I didn't say I'm not a Christian. I didn't say much about it. As far as my personal faith, I guess I have to quote Warren Zevon. If you remember Warren Zevon, I don't want to talk about it.
Werewolves of London.
Yeah, I was talking about when you lay my head on the railroad track, but yeah, Werewolves of London. That's Warren Zevon.
Yeah.
One thing he says is, I don't want to talk about it.
Things to do in Denver when you're dead.
Yeah, hey, you do remember Warren Zevon,
Of course.
Yeah.
I got an excitable boy just sitting next to me right here.
Well, my favorite Warren Zevon lyric, send lawyers, guns, and money. The bit has hit the fan.
Love Warren.
Yes.
His famous parting words before he left this earth was, enjoy every sandwich.
Yes. The famous last words, and that was him.
Profound. Yeah. Mary Beth Reimer, I don't know if you want to put or can put a number on this, but Mary Beth asks, how many actual real demonic cases have you seen? I guess you'll have to define real.
Yeah.
Is there a number? I mean, are you keeping like chalk?
Well, you have to weigh in all the extrapolations. Was it partially demonic or was it confirmed demonic? But I've narrowed it down to 5. 5, and James Anitto will say the same, that he's had 5. That we were sure it was demonic. whatever the origins, whatever the cause of that, 5 that we decided were demonic each, and those before we knew each other. So that I was sure were demonic.
Okay, so the answer 5.
5, yeah.
Which gives you, I think, a sense of, and this is 49 years.
It's actually 50 this year.
50,
I got to update it. Yeah.
Turning 50. But that gives you an idea of the rarity of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's probably another number that's much greater. How many have you been approached on? But we probably don't.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you mean this week? Or you think alike?
Yeah, we don't even want to go there. David Fritz, interesting question. And I assume he's referring to the farmhouse in Harrisville when he says this.
Yeah.
So this is subjective, of course, but did the Warrens bring the demons in with them?
I don't think they brought demons in with them, but as far as attachments or anything like that. But I think they crystallized the demon concept. You know, they gave it substance. That doesn't mean they brought it in and did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They did right by their means, by the way they handled things. And well, when, originally, as you must know, on my team at Rhode Island College, under the aegis of Rhode Island College, we had a team, PIRO, Parapsychological Investigatory and Research Organization, and we were investigating that case. We were actually called in by Mrs. Perrin and her husband. And so, Roger and Carolyn Perrin. And when the Warrens came in, and I was the one who introduced the Warrens to the Perrins, actually. And I told them about this case. It's not that our team ever felt that we were in over our heads with this investigation. I just thought we could benefit from the vast experience of Ed and Lorraine Warren, get some insight from them. It invited them over. I said, oh, how good. We'll be working with the Warrens. But when the Warrens came in, it ceased being an investigation and became an intercession. It lost its objectivity. It was no longer scientifically based. I mean, we're as scientific as we could be with our cassette recordings and our Polaroid swinger camera, but we were taking measurements and documenting. And, almost immediately, Mrs. Warren pronounced that a demonic haunting. And then they just approached it like that. We've got to whittle away the demon. They even gave it a name. It was a name out of history, actually, a name of a neighbor, Bathsheba Thayer Sherman, and she was demonized, and she became the bad guy for them. And it's just not the way I would have handled it. We just took very different approaches. But the Warrens, it became their case, more power to them. But I don't think he created the demon, but they pronounced it demonic, and there's no going back from that. You can't say, oh, we didn't really mean that. No, they said with some fortitude that it was demonic, and then they had to see it through. And to that end, they arranged a seance. And what better thing to do when it's a demon haunting the house than to have a seance so that the spirit can tell you what it's there for. Some spirit can let you know what's happening in the house. And to do that, they have to be channeled through a medium. So that's why I say it was an intercession.
Well, and we know from history that went terribly sideways.
Yes, it did. I'm not one to cite that at first. That's actual accounts of people who were eyewitnesses of how things went very wrong there. I mean, why? I just could not understand that. Why, when this woman was going on, she was being oppressed and taken more and more over, Mrs. Carolyn Perrin. At least that's how they reported it. But I do say that Mrs. Perrin, she was not delusional, but she was suggestible. This was her belief. This is how she interpreted, filtered through her mind. Maybe.
Well,
and then she goes under a fit of possession or channeling during a seance, and they staged I shouldn't say staged the seance. They arranged the seance for October 30th, 1973, Devil's Night, the night before Halloween. We had that case from August through August and September of 1973. The Warrens came in the second week of September 1973, and then it was no longer our case. So they arranged a seance with it, bring in their medium, bring in a priest, and hold the seance around a round table. So it didn't go wrong.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because at a filming that we had there on Halloween last year, we were in a gathering room, And this is the first time that I was aware of this. And Andrea on camera had said there was a priest there. And apparently he had no problem with a seance. And I recall distinctly turning to the person on my left, who was Susan Slaughter, Ghost Hunters International. She was a part of it. And this is unscripted. I mean, I think that our shock at that got the best of us, because I remembered we looked at each other with the same look on our face, like, wait, what? Like, this was co-signed? A priest? And, you know, so that,
maybe he must have seance table.
It was a detail I wasn't aware of that I thought was kind of astonishing, to be honest with you. I mean, I could see that.
True.
Well, I could see that. Okay, there's not much I can do about it. Go ahead and do your thing. But the word was encouraged, which was really weird to me. Getting back, Mikey Thompson. Hi, Mikey. How you doing, brother? Hello, all. Can things attach to people who have had near-death experiences and come back? Interesting question.
Seems to be.
What you think?
It is not logical, but it has been reported to happen, where somebody will either have more insight or an enlightenment, something of like an epiphany when they've had a near-death experience, and something they are more empowered, more of their psychic propensities are awakened. But also he's asking about, has something attached to him. Yeah, I've heard of it happening. I don't know the mechanics of it. I don't know how that would happen or why it would happen, except that when somebody is near death, they're in another realm. They've gone into a spiritual reality, be it within their mind or be it something more external in another dimension. They've traveled and they've opened up avenues, and something could hitchhike its way back in. You know, it is not a logical thing. The mind shouldn't be able to do that. It shouldn't happen spiritually. There should be a rule against that, but apparently there is not. So sometimes somebody's come back a little different from near-death experiences. Usually it's a positive thing. They make improvements in their life. They realize the brevity of life, and they have purpose in life. Sometimes something more negative comes back with them, and it's hard to shake. And that is just fascinating to me, because it is illogical, because I can't fully analyze it.
I've heard both ways, you know. I mean, but I don't know if there's empirical data. I mean, it's obviously something anecdotal that, you know, it's someone's story and how they feel.
But something to take seriously.
Yeah, I've heard both ways on that. I think our next question, this is a good one. I'm going to direct this to Elise, because you're looking at this from a different perspective. What is your opinion of priests and bishops who have performed exorcisms and has seen these demonic presences?
We have also heard stories about priests and bishops who have had religious ecstasies that have seen the saints. So I guess it depends on how deep that person's faith is and how good their imagination is. You know, you hear about these people having religious visions. They see saints and people that have gone before them. Maybe they're seeing demons too. I mean, again, very hard to get empirical evidence on that, what somebody believes they have seen.
Yeah.
You are an empiricist, if nothing else. You are that.
That's what we're looking for. And finally,
an empiricist. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a last question here. It goes to Carl. Interesting. Android Purity, cool handle, would like to know, what does Carl believe shape-shifting shadow figures are? Say that 4 times fast. From his experience and research. Interesting question. What are shadow people? And Carl, you can answer that. Elise, because of your background, parapsychology, this might be an interesting answer. So, who are the shadow people?
First of all, they're real. They're genuine. Well, I don't think we'll ever fully understand them. One theory I've heard put forth, it's not my own, but that they are ghosts that can't fully manifest as looking like once living human beings. They are a type of being that's obviously similar to us because they look like people. They might be an energy form that takes on their environment, because there's, you know, when they come into this world, there are human beings around, so they look like us. They start to assimilate our characteristics. They seem to be a separate being, kind of being. I think they only look like us because they're around us. They do things that human-like, but they move about very quickly. they're in a different time frame. Therefore, sometimes they're seen walking backwards. They just fascinate me, and they're hard to pin down because people do see, things out of the corner of our eyes, shapes and all. But when I was employed at Slater Mill, there was all 3 buildings on the campus had their own hauntings, and in the stone mill, which had the big water wheel, the power source, there was a shadow ghost in there, a shadow person, and I wasn't the first one to see him. People visiting the Slater Mill campus would say, "There's somebody walking around in there. He's like all gray or something." And our staff would have to go in and wouldn't see him. But eventually I did see him. I've seen him. I saw him, I think, 3 times. Yeah, 3 times I saw that shadow person. So there's something real. I think they're inextricably intermeshed with human beings. There's something related to us. But whether, we, generate them through our own living, my theory is that they come from us while we're living, and, we feed them. They're in a slightly different dimension from ours. That's why we can see them. They have their own cognizance. They're ghosts, and yet they're not, in a sense. You can interpret them as ghosts. And they don't like to be seen. They don't like to be photographed, but sometimes they're caught. They're caught on camera. They're seen moving about. I wish they'd give us more answers. I wish they'd communicate with us. Every once in a while, they have a voice. But they're just a separate reality, a separate type of conscious pseudo-human beings. Right. It's interesting that why aren't they just naked in outlines? Sometimes they wear cloaks and hats. Yeah, the shadow knows.
Hell yeah, the infamous hat, man. I always, and this is from somebody throwing this question at me, and I got nothing else. I said, I believe they may be spirits who have not fully manifested. For whatever reason, they're caught a little bit between in or out, but that's probably a very simplistic explanation to that.
Yeah, well, I don't think I gave a very good answer to it, not a deep answer. Just like I kind of think maybe, they're there. And I remember being out in Riverside, Rhode Island on an investigation with Brian J. Cano, and we were actually on a werewolf hunt. It would take a while to explain how we got to that point where we were looking for a werewolf. Something had to bring us there. There was some evidence that there was a kind of cryptid there that we call the werewolf or dog man. And I didn't want to tell Brian. We were out in the swampy area by the riverbank and wooded area. I didn't want to tell Brian right away what I saw. I wanted to have him say it. I said, "All right, I got some stuff here. What have you been seeing?" He said, "I've been seeing a lot of shadow persons. They're around here." I said, "That's exactly what I've seen. I've seen them in the woods. I've seen them. They're coming from the river and they're walking. It's not fog or anything. I've seen these figures." He described just what I saw. So
right.
Complimentary observation.
Let me see. Let's go with one more here. This may stir a hornet's nest here, but Anthony would like to know, hi guys, do you think some priests need to do an exorcism on themselves due to evil some of them have done to innocents? Just a thought.
Have you seen the movie The Rite?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
No more than any evil person probably should get exercise themselves.
I think they need to get a basic diagnostic done from time to time, and unless their strength is really impenetrable,
and it seems so much worse because when you've got a people that is supposedly a counselor, someone of authority, someone you can depend on, someone whose life you can put your life in their hands, and then they do somebody wrong, especially an innocent child or an innocent person. Right. It seems that much worse.
But some priests do that as an avocation. That's their job, so they have to have their antibodies built up. They have to have
what he means
resistance.
The question was, if the priest has done wrong, should they exercise themselves?
Well,
somebody should exercise them.
Yeah, hopefully conscience will get the best of them after a while, but that can make situations with exercising people.
I'd be okay if local law enforcement got the best of them at some point.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
we're going into a whole different thing here. But what I did want to talk to you about, starting with you, Elise, you have.
Are you alone?
I live in the middle of. I'm right next to George and Daytona right now. Apparently, What I wanted to ask you about is something that you volunteer a lot of time for. You spend a lot of time in cemeteries and graveyards.
I do.
And that sounds a lot more weird than what it actually is. But I want you to tell everybody about the passion and the commitment you have, and maybe your reasons behind why you spend so much time in cemeteries and graveyards.
I do spend a lot of time in cemeteries and graveyards, and let me say first that I have never seen anything or heard anything paranormal while I was there.
Okay, so that question is
not one of those cases where my two worlds collide. I look around, I walk in and I say, hey, I'm going to make a lot of noise. And as I leave, I say, hope you like the place. As the president of the Johnston Historical Society, we have a committee that takes care of the historic cemeteries in town. And even though Johnston's a small town with only 30,000 people, we have 100 historical cemeteries, which is a really high percentage for a town this size.
Do you have a number for the state of Rhode Island?
The state of Rhode Island has around 3,000.
Now, this is the smallest state in the country, ladies.
Yes, we are very fortunate. There's actually a website. I'll give them a little shout out. rihistoriccemeteries.org. I might not be saying it completely right, but you'll find it. There is a database of every historic burial in the state. There is actually a map with dots on it where you can find every cemetery. If you're hiking through the woods, you can bring up the map and see what dot you're next to, click on it, find out what cemetery number that is, what town you're in, who's buried there, when they were buried, sometimes a little bit about their life in the comment section.
Yeah, it's come in very handy sometimes.
It really does. And I mean, that's just one of the reasons I like doing cemeteries is the history that you learn in such things. One of my favorites, oh, there you go. Perfect.
There you go.
One of my favorites is a grave in Johnston where right on the man's stone, it says, was killed by lightning. So I looked up his story and I could not believe he was killed in 1796. I actually found a magazine article in New York about this poor man that was killed in Johnston by lightning. They must have interviewed his family because it happened on the family farm and it describes everything that happened to him. Mm-hmm. It's just an amazing story. You can find it at the Johnston Historical Society's website with our newsletters. But some of them have the manner of death on them, was drowned, families who were swept away and, when the dam broke. And there are just a million stories. And even the ones that don't have a story, you walk into a cemetery and a stone looks interesting, Google them, look them up on the website, and you'll learn something that, a story that hasn't been told in 100, 200 years.
Well, here's something that nobody really wants to take the time to do.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit more about cemeteries in general. Cemeteries can tell you a lot of things.
Yes.
Now, if you go into a cemetery, for example, and for whatever reason, there are a lot of, in this particular town, there are a lot of young men who are buried there. That might signify that they went off to war.
Yes. Yeah.
If you have a lot of young children and people dying on a certain year, that may signal a pandemic.
Definitely.
So you can get these little breadcrumb clues.
Yes.
From just going around, and I'm not saying do cemetery etchings because that's sort of.
No, there's so many pictures now. You've got that site that you just put up there. You've got Find a Grave. There are pictures of the stones. You don't need to rub the stones anymore.
Yeah. It just degrades them more.
It really does.
But there's a lot of information to be gleaned.
There is.
Just by taking a stroll sometimes, and you learn a lot about the background of a particular area.
There was one cemetery, I hadn't realized it. We cleaned it up a little, walked around, looked at the stones. The guy had, 4 wives? They're all buried next to him. We're wondering what his afterlife is like.
Yeah, I remember that experience. We put one number one, there's another one, and there's another one.
I've run into those where the second wife is buried, the ex-wife is
they're all like
stones away, and it's like, is this like get your popcorn?
Because these men would remarry right away. That's something else you learn looking at the stones with the dates of death and how old the next wife was.
Then, yeah.
They'd find another wife right away. They needed somebody to cook. They needed somebody to clean while they were out either working in a factory if you're in Rhode Island or working on the family farm. They needed a woman at home.
I don't believe I was ever involved with any woman who was so cooperative to actually be buried next to another one.
Yeah, well, sometimes it gets weird out there,
Yeah.
you know. But no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you know, commend you for the work you do to, out of respect and out of the goodness of your own heart, and all the rest of the volunteers that you're with to, you know, just clean away brush or do something with the stone.
That's the hardest part. You know, you worked in public works, and you know, we mow it one week, we go back the next week, it's 2 feet tall. Are you kidding me? We've got 99 more to take care of.
Yeah, and it's called recovery because you're restoring them, and you know it'll have to be done again, but you give it a head start for a year.
And I definitely suggest to any paranormal investigators that want to get information from their hometown, if they're investigating places in their hometown, don't just give the Historical Society a, you know, one and done call. What do you know about this house at, you know, 5 Smith Street? Volunteer. You don't, it doesn't mean you have to go dig brush in the cemeteries. Historical societies can use any kind of talent you have. One of my favorite stories is a woman I know that runs an historic house, had a group of people there, you know, asking them to please contribute their talents, do whatever they can to help the society. And a woman walked up and said, but I don't have any talent. I'm just an old retired woman. What do? I just stay home all day and I clean the house. You can clean a house? Great, you're hired. Everybody has something to contribute. You don't have to spend your, you know, 40 hours a week there. Get to know the people, get in there. You know, if you can do accounting, maybe help them with the books once in a while. Now you've got a constant source of information of the history and the places. I'm not saying you're getting leads for investigations, because honestly, I don't think I've ever investigated anything in John. There were a couple, but not a lot in my own town. But you'll enjoy the history, because hopefully that's what a lot of us investigators are there for.
It's not as though Elise has never found anything a little anomalous. Just some of these inscriptions and these stories they give in the infant mortality.
Well, there was the bag with the chicken bones and pennies.
What a bag with a chicken carcass and pennies, and then there was how about the creepy dolls cemetery?
That was creepy.
Yeah, strewn with dolls, and you know, like just withering away, rotting away. And
this is a great segue into what we're going to get into here. A little bit about cemeteries and graveyards. Do you guys know what death's door is, or where the term originated from?
Death's door. Is that the crypt they put them in the winter?
Okay, you see encircled here.
Oh yeah.
Are 2 stones come to a point with a chain in them. Everybody,
yes.
I've done the obligatory paranormal red circle around.
Very good.
And what those are, basically, it was considered in Victorian era bad luck. You never carried a casket in. What you did was set it on those stones, go inside on the other side, then pick up the casket and bring it in. And it was called Death's Door, hence the phrase came from standing at death's door.
Standing at
These are
that's fascinating.
Right.
Because that tradition didn't maintain into the 20th
Yeah,
century.
no. Are we aware? Is anybody aware out there what a wolf stone is? Here's an example of a wolf stone. Another example of a wolf stone.
You don't want anybody digging them up?
Anyone? Chat?
I've heard that recently, in fact. As a matter of
fact. A wolf stone is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. I heard that recently, in fact, that they, you know.
Yes.
Yep. The design of which was made to ensure that wolves did not dig up a freshly buried body.
Yep. That's why in some unmarked graves, you know, they call them cairns or piles of stone. They would pile the stones on top so nothing would dig them up.
Critters do that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is more like a Chris Rondina type story here, but then of course,
look at that.
There's the Puritan cherub.
With me. I don't. The winged.
Let me get one for you.
I'll go get one.
You see a lot of these things in the Northeast, particularly in Rhode Island.
Yes.
Here's the cherub.
Yes.
Which is symbolic of the soul of the dead. And you see a lot of these, and these are misunderstood. There's a skull, and you see these all the time. But that was a symbol of inevitability.
Yes.
It's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
And then there's the urn and the willow, which really kind of signaled the end to that Puritan sort of mentality.
Yep. What's amazing is you've got some of these beautiful stones that have all this beautiful carving on slate, the ones that you're showing. And then later, towards the 1800s, they started making the new stones were made out of marble. And what we found was maybe you had a wife that passed away, young in age, that got her a beautiful slate stone. The husband died later on in years. The family bought him a marble stone, bought his wife, bought the deceased mom, another marble stone so it would match the husband's. They tossed the slate stones. I found them in corners. I found them sat atop walls. You just use as a flat piece of rock.
And also trees encircling that grow around them.
Got rid of the beautiful.
Oh, you brought something for show and tell.
Yes,
I have. This is.
Unfold it.
I'm going to. Yeah, we're going. This is the Johnston Historical Society logo, available in so many different sizes and colors. Let's get it over here.
Wow, I did not know you had that kind of merch.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me.
Yeah, pretty close. This was carved by a man named Borden Thornton.
Look at the face.
Stone carver from Johnston.
Wow.
And this is the Peter Randall stone. Someone did a rubbing of it years ago, and we've used that on T-shirts since.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
All right, let everybody know where they can get
classic New England design, like you said.
Right. Finally, before we got about 5 minutes here, and this is something that people see a lot, and this is symbolic of Britain's dalliance with Egypt, the obelisk.
Ah, yes.
Oh, yes, the ever true obelisk. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
very popular.
A petrified sun ray to the god Ra.
That was another thing I loved when I was a kid, besides the paranormal, was Egyptology.
Yes, some type of energy. So if you see these things being very ornate and you say, who could afford something like that? Now you know the symbolism behind them. So
and it's really tough.
What have we learned about graveyards?
What to do? Yeah, because Akhenaten, I had he was a pioneer in monotheism. And his wife Nefertiti, they wanted, the one God. And for a time, the old gods became obsolete, the pantheon of gods in Egypt. But then after his death, they were restored, and his symbols etched away. But yeah, that was right from Egyptology, the popularity of Egypt, and of course, it's rising towards the sun into heaven. Yeah. So this year being the 100th anniversary of Howard Carter finding King Tut's tomb. Yes.
Find yourself a pyramid, folks.
Yeah. We're up against the clock here, and I want to give you guys some time. It flew by. This 2 hours flew by. But if you guys wish to give all of our viewers and listeners on KGRADB some of the upcoming things that'll be happening with Panorama Paranormal, if anyone wishes or needs to contact you for a case, how can they reach out to you?
Well, it's as simple as doing a search for Panorama Paranormal, because we're fairly unique in that. Like Mrs. Slocum and Are You Being Served? I am unanimous in that. Yes, we have a page on Facebook, the ubiquitous Facebook, Panorama Paranormal. Also, we have a website in development, and Elise has been working very diligently on that, creating that. Within a month or so, we'll have our website up and running and launched. And we'll look for Panorama Paranormal through that. We do talks and lectures at various libraries, and they're scheduled sporadically, so it's hard to say just what our roster will be for the rest of the year. But they do come up, and hopefully we'll be doing one pretty soon. Not having to wait until Halloween because everybody wants to book us. And duo demonology, they want us in September and October.
Wow.
Well, now you've got no more Slater Mill to get in the way.
Yeah, I used to have to schedule it because October being the most popular month for the ghost hunt at good old Slater Mill, and that's not there, and it's the form it was, not for me anyway.
Buildings there.
Yeah, the buildings are there, and they give tours on weekends, but not evening tours anymore. So, but that's a blessing and a curse because it would interfere with other things I wanted to do. But it was wonderful to do those ghost hunts, and they were legitimate paranormal investigators. They were entertainments, but they were also real, ghost hunting procedure.
They were
results.
Yeah. Panorama Paranormal. You guys,
if you learn to pronounce it, then you'll know how to look it up. Yeah. What you did fine, George. Panorama Paranormal.
That's it. You guys have been fantastic. We've really enjoyed your time with us this evening, and we're looking forward to having you back again, maybe right in that Halloween time frame. So.
Oh yes, because we're just special.
Book us early.
Please do, yes.
Yeah. Keep in touch with us, guys, and thanks so much. And please, stay cool as the summer months approach. But that's it for us tonight, guys. Want to thank again our very special guests tonight, Elise Carlson and Carl Johnson. We'll be back next Sunday night. Make sure you check out all the content. Hit that subscribe button here on Dead Air YouTube. We'll be back next week. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.